She's not what you'd expect. She's tough and feisty, but gentle and tender. She makes millions and gives millions to the poor. She cries, she laughs, she teaches, she comforts. This is the Dani Johnson Show.
Hi, I'm Dani Johnson. Welcome to the Dani Johnson Show. Today is that one day of the week that we put our focus completely on spiritual matters. Because when you're dry spiritually, man, your life is dry. Finances are dry, your emotions are dry, like everything just seems dry, brittle, able to break. Kind of like how the desert is right now during the summer hot season. Things can be so brittle, easy to break, and really, really dry. Have you ever been in that place where, well, there's just people around you that when they make a mistake, right away it kind of triggers you to not trust them? Do you find that there are very few people that you can actually trust? Are you working with some individuals that you kind of are always guarded about? You know what I mean? You're not going all in that working relationship, and maybe it's even happening at home. Like even at home, like, okay, you could be married to somebody, and yet you're kind of like not going all in with your trust. Do you realize that this comes from things of your past? Because if you've been burned before, if you've had the rug pulled out from under you, if you have felt even neglected by your father or your mother, that if you were in a situation where someone betrayed you, there's a really good chance that distrust is a habitual thought process in your head. And why is this dangerous? Because you never are able to enter into intimate relationships. You also cannot handle conflict. What's conflict? Someone that doesn't agree with your opinion. Somebody that doesn't have the same perception, the same mindset. Someone that doesn't have the same perspective that you do. Somebody that has a totally different view and or different values than you do. The kind of person who has distrust in their heart, or it's a habitual way of living and thinking, does not have real intimate relationships and never reaches their fullness of their success. I'm going to show you a story here in the best success book ever written that shows a team of people that were in big trouble. A team of people, largely actually all men, that had to come together and work together to defeat an army that was bigger, better, stronger, more skilled, with a better strategy. Now, you might be in business or in the workplace today, and you might have a team of people that you work with. If you don't have really close, intimate trust with these individuals, you can't possibly win the way that you want to win. So this year, we kind of started this year with play to win. That playing to win has to be a purpose thing. It has to be a strategic thing. And it is a choice. But there's one component that you must have in order to win. In order to win at work and in order to win at home, this one thing you have to be good at. So let's get right into it. It's a super short story. Let me give you a little bit of the background. We're going to be reading from 1 Chronicles chapter 5, and we're going to start at verse 20. And we're just going to camp out right there on chapter 20. I'm first going to give you a little bit of background. So the children of Israel, throughout their history, had times where they had really good kings and then not such good kings. Kind of sounds like the United States of America, right? Had some kings that followed the values of which their fathers followed, and they ruled rightly. They were just. They were benevolent. They were giving. They were strong where they needed to be strong. They didn't cheat the scales of balance for the poor or the widow or the sick. They were very balanced in how they loved the people in which they were leading. And they were fair and just and righteous. And then there were these other kings that were not fair, just, or righteous. There were these other greedy kings, these other greedy leaders and political figures that were were out for their own gain. They were irresponsible. They were not loving and kind or just to the poor and the widow, but instead they cheated those people to create even more wealth for themselves, and or the ones that were working for them were cheating them, and they just kind of turned a blind eye. They took bribes and gave bribes, okay? So listen, so throughout history, they had these two types of leaders that would be leading their nation at a time, and the whole nation suffered during the unrighteous ones, and then during the righteous times, they would have, they would have victories, and they would be winning, and they would prevail, and they would be strengthened. Well, this happens to be a time where they're coming out of a bad season after following a bad leader, a bad political figure, and therefore they were paying a price for it. So now there was a new one that was rising up, right? So it's now like, hey, listen, we cannot do this anymore. We cannot be twisting the scales of balance. We cannot be unrighteous in our ruling for the people. We cannot be unjust any longer. We've got to be watching out for the weak ones, the oppressed ones. We've got to worry about the well-being of those that we are working with, okay? So now there's a shift, and they're realizing after coming out of some really poor leadership that, man, we've got to turn this ship around, and we've got some things to change if we're going to become more blessed, if we're going to prevail. And so now they're at war. They're at war against another kingdom. They are outnumbered. They are outstrengthed. They are outstrategized, okay? They are in a very weak position, and they really don't have a chance of winning. So here they are. They're in battle. Now, could you imagine you're on the weak team? You are on the team that's been bloodied up. You're on the team that has been tortured. You're on the team that has been forgotten. You've been following a leader that has caused destruction all around you, and you know it. And it's based on the injustice. It's based on the wickedness. It's based on the jealousy. It's based on their greed, right? It's based on their selfishness. You know that's why everything has gone to pot and is a mess. So now you're coming out of that. So what do you have? You have a team that is wary. They are tired. They know that their opponent, their competition is stronger, better, smarter. They know that they don't have a chance to make it. But check this out. This is so amazing. So we'll start at verse 20. Yeah, that's the only verse we're going to read. So again, this is 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 20. And they were helped against them, and the Hagrites were given into their hand, and all were with them. Listen, for they cried out to Elohim in the battle, and he answered their prayer. Pay attention, because they put their trust in him. Elohim, by the way, is Hebrew for God. Listen carefully. I just explained the circumstances. You might be living in similar circumstances right now. It could be in the marriage. It could be with your teenager or your toddlers. It could be in your work life, it's just rough, right? Listen carefully. This is so crazy. That's exactly where these guys were. And what was their strategy? They cried out to their God. They cried out to their God. And what happened? Their enemy was given into their hands. They were completely taken out. Their opponent that was bigger, that was stronger, that was better, that was more strategic, was taken out completely. And what is the key? Listen carefully again. They cried out to their God in the battle. In the midst of the battle, they cried out to him, and he answered their prayer because, big word, because they put their trust in him. 3 things. Let's dissect this. In the midst of the battle, are you pulling your team together to say, time out? We need to pray. Time out. We're outnumbered. We're out-strategized. We're out-strengthened. We need to pray. Do you have the guts to do that? Or are you still just whining about how weak you are? Are you still whining about how strong your opponent is? Are you still whining about how great your competition is? Or are you pulling your team together and saying, guys, let's pray. We got to pray. We need real help. We need to pull in the big gun here. We're outnumbered. We're out-strategized. We're out-strengthened. We're not going to make it. So do you have the guts, no matter what your position is on the team, that instead of having all of that stress and all of that tension and all of that stuff that makes you more and more discouraged, that makes you feel even more like a loser and that you are losing, rather than doing that, friend, this is where you surrender. You put up the white flag in front of the team and you say, you know what? We ain't smart enough. We're not fast enough. We ain't strong enough. We're not good enough. But I know one who is. And if we put our trust in him, he's going to help. Number one, in the midst of your battle, in the midst of the pain, in the midst of the confusion, in the midst of the feeling like you're lost or you're going to lose or you've already lost, cry out to your God. One, have the courage to be the one that steps up and says, this is where we're at. In the midst of this battle, while the fiery darts are flying, right, between you and your spouse or you and your kid, while the fiery darts are flying at work, it's time to pray. It's time to pray. It's time to confess even our weakness. It's time to even say, like, we're outnumbered. But our God, that if we cry out to him, he is going to hear from heaven. So, number one, will you be the one who steps up? Number two, when? Right in the middle of the battle. Right in the middle of the mess. Right in the middle of the confusion. Right in the middle of the loss. Number three, know this. It says he answered their prayer because he answered their prayer because they put their trust in him. Can we talk about that for a minute? Where is your trust? You see, their trust could not possibly have been in their own strength because they didn't have it. Their trust couldn't possibly have been in their own mind, their own strategy, because why? They knew that the opponent had a greater strategy. It couldn't be in their number. Their trust couldn't be in their number or in their armory. So many people put their trust in their own ability. And recently I was in a meeting where I had said, I realized, like, my mind and strategy, I'm not as strategic, let's say, as some of the other greater minds that are around me, my husband being one of them, a couple of friends being others that are there. There's a couple of minds inside of our office that are, like, really strategic. And I'm always blown away by their ability to strategize and to think outside of the box. And so I know what my weakness is, and I know what their strength is. And sometimes I can put my trust either in my strength or in somebody else's strengths. But this is saying, put your trust in your God. And it shows something very powerful, that he answered their prayer because. You see, you can pray all day and night and get nowhere and get nothing done. The key to an answered prayer is trust. What is trust? Trust is a full surrender, man. It's a full surrender, and it's not trying to control the outcome. It is simply saying, whatever you want to happen here, we're going to trust you. Whether we get slaughtered, we're going to trust you. I'm going to choose trust. Now listen carefully. In the very beginning of this show, I said this to you. Do you find yourself to be that person that largely doesn't trust your coworkers, largely kind of even wonders in the back of your head they're going to screw you over, that somehow they're going to miss that deadline, that somehow they've got something out for you, that either they want your job, or do you know what I'm saying? Like, are you one of those that's kind of suspicious of other people's motives all the time? That you look at them with a, I'll trust you until, and I'm waiting for you to screw up. I'm waiting for you to blow it out of proportion. I'm waiting for you not to do what you're supposed to do. Well, friend, I'm going to tell you something. The way that the tracks in our mind work is that whatever you believe and whatever you are expecting is what you are going to get. You are going to get, in the very same spirit in which you are dwelling on it, you're going to get your own self-fulfilled prophecy. That which you think of those coworkers that you're working with, that which of how you see them to not be dependable, how you see them to be too competitive with you, how you see them to be disrespectful towards you, how you see them to not hear you, they never listen to you, okay? How you see them, they are going to fulfill what you see. And here's why. Because you will act and you will say, your body language is communicating to them what your expectations are of them. If you're guarded, you don't trust them, they can't possibly trust you. And if there is no trust, you cannot succeed. If in this year you're wanting to play to win, let's look at this big win that this tiny little army who had been beat up for a long time, how they won. When the odds were against them, how are they able to conquer and win instead of losing again? If you have been on a losing streak, you're going to have to do this. 1, step up and say, we got to pray. When? Right in the midst of the giant mess. And 2, if you want that prayer to be answered, what do you need to do? You have to trust. Yeah. What does it mean to trust? First of all, 2 things. 1, trust is a choice. I'm going to say that again. Trust is a choice. And you've got to choose trust. Trust does not just like come out of nowhere, friend. Especially if you've had any time with other human beings, any length of time with other human beings, I promise you, human beings are going to disappoint you. The human beings you've given birth to are going to disappoint you. The human being you stood at an altar and exchanged vows with is going to disappoint you. The human beings that hired you or that you hired are going to disappoint you. And guess who else is going to disappoint you? Your God. Yeah. What? Dani, that's like so sacrilegious. No, it's not. Because you have certain expectations of your God. And I promise you, your expectations of your God are really small in comparison to who he actually is. Your expectations of your God actually come from the programming you've had since you were born. The programming, the positioning of how someone talked about him positioned in your mind who he was. I grew up with an atheist and an agnostic. So hello. Not to mention the fact that when we are a child, we look up to our parents as though they are a God. They are our God when we are little. And if you had a super healthy relationship with your father, then there's a good chance you got a good healthy self-esteem. But if you did not have a good healthy relationship with your father, there's a good chance that you've got some low self-esteem issues. It also shows that you have some distrust against leadership and a good chance you've got distrust against your God. This is all programming that has been put into us from the adults that were around us doing their best to do life in the best way they knew how, and they were humans. So look, 2 things about trust. Trust is a choice. And humans are going to fail you. They're going to discourage you. They are going to disappoint you. You're not getting out of this life without being disappointed by your spouse, your kids, your coworkers, the market, and your God at least 1,000 times in your life. It's impossible. So this is why trust has to be a choice. You have to choose trust. And you have to choose to trust your team if you plan on winning this year. Yes, they have failed. And guess what? So have you. You are a fool if you think you haven't. You are a fool if you think you have been perfect in every way. So it's time to do this. It's time to look in the mirror yourself and own the mistakes you have made towards these people. These expectations you've had, these judgments that you've had against them that have caused you to look at them with eyes of distrust and being guarded against them, waiting for them to fail you, being threatened by their performance. And you've got to choose that when they screw up, you have to choose that their heart was in the right place. You have to choose to trust that they were given it their best shot. You have to choose to trust that they did not have some ill intent against you. They're a part of your mission. They're there because they want to be there. They're there because they believe, and they're there because they want to serve. So you got to choose trust in the midst of the battle. And you have to choose to trust your team. Trust requires humility. And people who are not trusting of others have a pride issue, big ego issue. Humility leads to trust. So one, you got to trust your team, but most importantly, you need to trust your God. And you need to trust that your God has you exactly where he wants you, with the team in which he's chosen to put around you, with all the flaws that the team has. And why? Because their flaws give you an opportunity to build trust with them, to believe in them, to encourage them, to edify them, that when they fall down and when they mess up, you are there to relieve them of the pain that they have, that they feel from the mess up that they've made, versus going, there you are again, I can't believe you're doing that. Boom. That is pride and ego, and that will never lead to a win. But humility and trust will lead to a win. So choose to trust in your God. And if you're praying without trusting, you might as well shut up, because he ain't going to hear it. He's not going to respond to it. We see clearly right here, he answered their prayer because they put their trust in him. So what does that look like? When you put your trust in him, you're going to trust the team that he's given you. You're going to trust that they have your best interest in mind, and you're going to make the choice to trust the God that has directed them, the God that is in them. Do you understand? Especially if they are believers. And even if they're not, the hand of God is on their life because you are in their life. So put your trust in him and you will succeed. Put your trust in him and you're going to win greater than you ever have. Put your trust in him and then you can trust your team. And as you trust your team, and you trust him that's in them, you're going to have the greatest win with the least amount of effort. And this is when he gives your opponent right into your hands. And you don't have to worry about that competition anymore, because there is none. Why? Because your God is for you if you put your trust in him. So it's time to play to win. And it's time to play to win just like this defeated team did. And I don't care if you're in the middle of a battle or not, that battle's about to turn around in your favor. I don't care if the battle's at home or at work or in your finances. The battle is already won if you put your trust in him. So it's time to do that right now. And it's time even to pray and ask him to forgive you if you haven't trusted. Because if you can't trust the people that you're working with, guess what? It means you're not trusting him. He's in control of all things and everything that is around you. So do you trust him? If you don't, confess it now and ask him to forgive you. If you are trying to control circumstances and control people, guess what? You don't trust him. If you are fearful about your future, guess what? You don't trust him. If you are fearful about your job, guess what? You don't trust him. If you are afraid of being screwed over by family members, friends, or coworkers, guess what? You don't trust him. If you're afraid of getting cancer and you're afraid of having bad health, if you're afraid of your spouse cheating on you, guess what? You don't trust him. You don't trust him. So surrender all of that, because the Bible considers that sin. Surrender all of that and say, please forgive me for not trusting. Please forgive me for not trusting you. Please forgive me for not trusting you with my staff. Please forgive me for not trusting you with my business. Please forgive me for not trusting you with my marriage, with my kids. Please forgive me for trying to control all things. In fact, just ask him to forgive you. Here's the facts. You can't control anyone. And you really, if you think about it, you can barely control yourself. So put your trust in the only one that will not fail and will not fail you. Fully trust him through the journey, through the battle, through the arrows that are flying from your competition. Fully trust, surrender, and watch your blessing come, just as he did with them. I can't wait to hear from you, and I can't wait to hear what he's doing in your life. Thanks so much for joining us today. By the way, if you want more stuff, more content like this, if you want to be encouraged, if you also want to be challenged spiritually, if today applied to you, would you do us one quick favor? Listen, freely you've received this information, freely give it. Please share this video on your social media or through text or through email or just texting, like through your text messages. Please share it. Share it with others. You would be amazed who needs to hear this, even if you just post it. In your social media areas, somebody's going to see it, and it could be just the right person. And you were actually the person that helped to change their life because they found it through you. So please share it. And if you want more content like this, you can find it at our website, DaniJohnson.com. Again, that's DANI Johnson.com, DaniJohnson.com, where you're going to find thousands of testimonials of other people who have been able to get themselves out of this terrible battle and fight, in fact, even a season of a fight, and come out prevailing and winning. And why? Because they put their trust in him. They learn new strategies that are available on our website, all biblically based, by the way, everything, all our financial training. And I'm saying training, not just like not just talking. I'm saying specific training. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do this. The how-tos that somehow church and our family might have missed in teaching us. You're going to learn the how-tos on how to succeed in every single area of your life. How to have that hot marriage, how to be completely debt-free, how to be on top financially, how to groom your children exactly in the way that they're supposed to go so that you know I did the job I was supposed to do. Whatever happens, happens. Lord, I trust in you. So if you want very specific biblical training in all areas of your life so that you can rule and reign with your God instead of just waiting for blessing to fall out of the sky and you're still waiting 20 years later, if you want more of that, go to DaniJohnson.com. You're going to find all kinds of materials. You'll find the show. You'll find all kinds of other training materials that you can take advantage of. And I hope you and I get to meet live, face-to-face one day at a First Steps to Success training seminar. That's it for me. Have a great one. Goodbye.